perhaps when you've had a couple of big sighing breaths, then you could bring your hands to rest on the front of your body somewhere. So really wherever feels comfortable to you. And then maybe 3 cycles of breath where you're feeling the movement of your breath in your body. Feeling the breath coming in, feeling the breath leaving you. Good. And just having that sense of how you are right now. And if your legs are long, you're going to now bend your knees and bring your feet to stand on the floor. And have your feet a little distance apart. And then start to let your knees tilt to the right and to the left. That's it. And just see how this movement feels. And you can keep it quite small and easy. Or if it feels very easy and your body feels quite free today, then you can make it a larger movement. So it's really up to you. Letting the knees tilt from side to side. And as you do so, noticing how this feels around the back of your pelvis, into your hip joints, into your lower back. And yeah, of course, if you're feeling at all creaky around the lower back, just go easy. And then what I'd like you to do is pause in the middle and take your feet a bit wider apart. So your feet are as wide as your mat, the narrow edge of your mat, obviously. That's it. And then carry on, come back to tilting your knees. That's it, but with your feet this wider apart distance. And see how this feels. So perhaps we start to feel a little bit more of the movement into the hip joints. And again, it can be small. The movement can be small. Make sure that you're letting your both knees tilt. So one knee is coming towards the center, one knee is moving out to the side. Sometimes we leave the out to the side knee behind. Good. Now it's really up to you. If you're doing this and it's feeling quite easy, if you like, you can let your knees rock all the way over to one side and have a couple of breaths there. It might be that you want to support either the knee that's going out to the side with your fist, or if there's a cushion nearby, you could support either knee. But if it's not comfortable for you to do that right now, then just carry on tilting your knees from side to side. Good, and just a couple of breaths, and then you can do the same thing on the other side. Good, yes, and when you've done that, then it might be quite nice just to come back to tilting the knees from side to side. And what I'd like you to do is from here, let yourself roll all the way onto one side. So you can let your knees lead you, but then you could let your shoulders and your head follow, and just come to lie quite comfortably on your side for a moment. Let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. And then we're actually from our sides going to come over into Cobbler Pose and do a little bit of pinwheel before we come into standing. So again, just really carrying on with this work, this movement around the pelvis and the hip joints. So if you come into Cobbler Pose and lean back onto your hands. So again, keep it comfortable and easy. Yeah, so lean back, see how it feels to let your knees fall out to the side. If you're leaning onto your arms, you're just not having to worry about your spine and your back. Good. And then from here, we'll let one knee come on top of the other knee. So we come into our side sitting, and then we'll slide the top leg back. And then we can come into a little bit of circling. And when you do this circling, you can keep your movement small, or you can do a larger movement if you like. Entirely up to you. So in this circling, we're going in both directions. We're just thinking about settling our contact with the ground. And then we're going to come into our pinwheel forward bend. So if you turn to face your knee that's going out to the side and then fold your body over your thigh. So as much as possible, we're resting the weight of the body down through the thigh, down to the ground. And just see how it settles here for how it feels to settle here for a couple of cycles of breath. Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave you. And I find this is a really helpful place for me to be if my lower back is feeling a bit tight, which it has been doing over the last few weeks. It's a place where we can start to encourage a little bit of sort of lengthening and opening through the lower back. Maybe one more cycle of breath. And then walking your hands in towards you. And May join us here. So, yes, so stay in pinwheel. And we're going to come to doing our pinwheel twist here. So May, nice to see you. We've just had a very little bit of lying down. And then we've come from cobbler pose into pinwheel on one side. So what I'd like you to do is lean into your arm that's the same as the knee that's going out to the side, that arm. And then we start these turning movements where we're swinging our arm around. And what I'd like you to do is the other arm, is to slap your hand onto the back of your shoulder. Good. So we're going to be taking this movement. So having done our pinwheel forward bend, we're now taking the movement into a little twist, but then we're going to be taking it towards the sort of opening through the front of the body. So if you stay with your hand resting on your shoulder, sink down into your arm so your pelvis can come off the floor, and then you can reach up towards the ceiling through your fingers and look up. Good. And we'll do this 3 times. So come back down. Obviously sort of keep easy with it, keep it comfortable. You can swing your arm around, slap your hand onto your shoulder, sink down through your arm, let your pelvis come up, and then let your fingers grow up towards the ceiling. So we feel we're opening through the front of the body. And we'll do that one more time. So we can swing our arm round, hand comes onto the back of the shoulder, we sink down into our supporting hands and arm. We can grow up towards the ceiling. Good. Very nice. And then come back down, slide your back leg on top of your front leg. So back into side sitting, back through cobbler pose. And back onto side 2 of pinwheel. Okay, and just a bit of circling in side 2 of pinwheel. And from our circling, so again, we can keep this circling sort of small, we can do bigger circles if we like. But from our circling, just like we did on the other side, we'll turn to face this thigh and knee that's turning out to the side. And then we'll fold the weight of our body down over that leg. And settle there. And have a few breaths. So when we're settling here, and yeah, you go as low or as high, or whatever feels comfortable for you. And when you're settling here, this is very much our focus is on the back of the body, being able to lengthen out this sort of gentle curve through our spine. Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave us. Okay, walking your hands in towards you. I mean, you can stay there a bit longer if you like. And then we move on to the sort of twisting movement. So we'll lean onto, so that knee we were just folded over. If we lean onto that arm, so already my sort of back leg buttock is coming off the floor. Yes, and as we start to do this sort of swinging, turning movement, the pelvis comes along. So we're not trying to keep ourselves fixed below the waist, which I know we do in some twists. Good, so your hand can come and slap onto the back of your shoulder, then you leave your hand there, sink down into your supporting arm, let your fingertips grow up towards the ceiling. So now we're thinking about this feeling of opening through the front of the body. So we can swing our arms, slap ourselves on the back of the shoulder, Reach up towards the ceiling, feel the front of the body opening. Make sure whatever you're doing feels comfortable for how your body is right now. So, and we're going to do it 3 times, which I cannot believe at the moment that even I'm struggling to count to 3. So if like me you're a little bit confused whether you've done 3 or not, then thereabouts. Good. Very nice. And then from here, we're going to come onto hands and knees. We're going to come into dog pose and make our way up into standing. So come on to hands and knees. Maybe take a moment to plant your hands on the ground and then tucking your toes under, exhaling, rocking your hips back and up. Into dog, and have a few breaths in dog pose. So see how your dog pose feels. So the first dog pose of the day might all feel a little bit creaky, which is fine. Have a few breaths in dog. And then from dog pose, you're going to be walking your hands in towards your feet. So you come into a forward bend. And of course, at that point, make any adjustments you need to. You might want to bend your knees and rest your elbows on your thighs to support your lower back. Couple of breaths in your forward bend, and then rolling up into standing or walking your hands up the fronts of your thighs. So as I said, I thought we should get moving today, not in a sort of alarming, hopefully dramatic way, but just in the fact that it is quite cold, probably in Bristol as well as Brighton. Bright and cold, rather nice, but yeah, good. So when you arrive in standing, we're just going to do a few sort of, I suppose, loosening up things. So the first thing is your nice, loose, easy swinging twist. So feeling the whole of your body in movement. Good. And this is just, yeah, hopefully an enjoyable way for ourselves to arrive in standing. I can see that I've gone a bit descended into darkness in my screen. Hopefully Zoom will click on and brighten up. Now, I don't know if any of you saw in The Guardian the article about the judge. No, it was someone in court, wasn't it, in the States, who had themselves on as a kitten instead. And I was thinking, well, how do you do that? I'd really like to have a kitten filter on Zoom. But yeah, not today. Okay, so from here, from swinging our arms, or swinging our whole selves, we're just going to focus in now on swinging our arms a little bit. So settle down with your feet a little distance apart and bring your hands into prayer pose in front of your chest. So you want to have space now that you can swing your arms out to the side, because we're going to let a breath come in. Exhale, take our arms down and then up, and then swing them and cross them in front of ourselves. Good. And just keep really, that's it. Make sure if you're hitting a wall, then turn around so you can swing your arms without having to worry about that. Good. And then you're going to swing your arms all the way into eagle arms. So you might want to give yourself a hug and then come on into your eagle arms. And at this point, because I haven't said have your right or left arm on top, just just check which arm's on top. So in a moment you can do the other side. And if you like here, you can just turn a little bit to the left and the right. But now this is just the turning from the waist up. So let your shoulders and your elbows and your head turn a little bit from side to side if you like. Good. I'll turn my light on here. And then obviously releasing your arms, remembering which arm was on top. If that's going to make it any brighter. Good. Come back. Let's see if we can still, maybe a few times, just come back to swinging your arms and crossing them. We won't do the whole little sequence, otherwise we might forget which arm needs to go on top. And then swinging your arms all the way into eagle arms on the other side. And having a few breaths here. And again, if you like, you can do that small rotation movement. So where we're trying to keep our pelvis stationary and move our shoulders and our ribs and our arms and our head from side to side. Good. And that's up to you. Or that you can always draw a circle with your elbows. That's another option over here. Just sometimes it's good to have a bit of movement rather than be too fixed. And then whenever you're ready, release your arms, give them a shake out. Give your legs a little bit of a shake out, because we're just going to do I suppose quite a simple balance at this point, and then we'll come back and we'll do a little bit more with it shortly. So what you're going to do now is this shifting your weight forwards onto the balls of your feet, so both feet. So it's a 2-foot balance, which maybe feels a little bit less alarming. But it's this work, that's it, so sort of working into the balls and the arches of the feet. And then in a moment, if we feel steady, we're going to stay balancing on the balls of the feet and let the arms come up. Float the arms up, keep the shoulders soft and relaxed. Let yourself have a few breaths here and just see how it feels. Yeah, how steady do we feel today? Sometimes when we ask ourselves that question, that's when we start to feel wobbly. Good. Very nice. When you come down from this balance, you're going to sort of sweep you all the way down into a forward bend. So you can let your heels come down. You can sweep your arms out and around. If you need to rest your elbows on your thighs, you do so. And then release your head and arms to the ground. And we do have a third Sarah now. So Sarah, very nice. Sarah from the next street to me. Nice to see you. Good. Okay, so just have another breath or so in your forward bend, and then sink into your heels, roll up into standing, or walk your hands up the fronts of your legs. And we're going to come to doing, I say a little bit of a sequence, but basically we're going to be moving from the back of the mat down onto the floor, doing a few things, coming back up, and so on. So again, just to sort of keep us moving. So come to the back of your mat, bring your hands into prayer pose, because we'll move like the beginning of sun salute. So you want to have the mat stretched out in front of you. And maybe just before we start moving, take a moment, closing your eyes, connecting with the flow of your breath. So feeling the movement of your breath within you. Maybe feel a breath come in, feel a breath leave you. Open your eyes, let another breath come in, and as you exhale, take your arms down and then up. Receive a breath, feeling long and tall, and then exhaling, curling down into your forward bend. And again, a couple of breaths in your forward bend. And from the forward bend, we're going to walk forwards into dog pose once more. When you arrive in dog pose, you might want to be bending one knee, bending the other, bending both. Really resting down into your hands, making sure you've got big handprints on the floor. You can be exhaling, a big sort of sighing breaths through your mouth. It's always nice in dog. Whenever you're ready, coming on to hands and knees. Now, I hope it's not going to be too noisy. My poor next door neighbours have got no boiler and they're having a new one put in. So if there is any noise, that is what it's going to be. So on hands and knees, you're going to start to do some cat movements. So settle on hands and knees, and then rounding your back and dipping your spine, and just seeing how these movements feel today. So sometimes we do these cat movements a bit earlier on in class, and maybe we're feeling a bit stiffer at that point. I don't know. Just, yeah, how does it feel? So how does it feel when you round your back to the ceiling, you let your head hang, your belly gathers up? How does it feel when you let your spine dip down to the floor? You let your belly soften and relax, and your gaze travels forwards. We're also going to do some tail wagging movements. So you can do these by obviously imagining you have a tail. and wagging it from side to side. You could do the variations where we move our lower legs from side to side, so we can do that slowly, looking down or back, looking back towards our feet. Feeling how one side of the body shortens. And we can also do it quickly. This one which we call little fishes, where we swing the lower legs from side to side. And then personally, I would not look back at my feet. I would be dizzy. Okay. We're going to be, in a moment, coming into child pose just for a couple of breaths. So I suggest before to come into child pose by coming back into your rounded up cat. So rounding your back to the ceiling, looking back towards your feet as you rock back into child. And just coming into child pose for a couple of breaths so you can feel the ground beneath you. Feel the breath within you. We're going to keep on moving. So from child pose, I'd like you to slide your hands forwards on the mat so your elbows come off the ground and you can plant your hands on the floor. So can you slide your hands forward, you plant your hands on the floor, and then you come up onto hands and knees. So it means you've come into this longer hands and knees. You can always adjust at this point, but you want to be in a hands and knees position where your hands are further forwards than your shoulders. And then we're just going to do a little bit of sort of, I suppose, tentative rocking forwards. So it's not necessarily going all the way into face up dog, although some of you may be keen to, which is fine. It's just starting to lean our weight more through our arms and our hands. It's quite a big stretch for the wrists. Yeah, so how does this feel? But we don't need to push it at this point. Okay, if it's all feeling okay and you want to see how does it feel to go all the way into face up dog, you can do. We will come back to this in a little bit. Okay. And then from here, rock back onto hands and knees, tuck your toes under, walk your hands in towards your knees and pick your knees up off the floor. So if you missed the tuck the toes under bit, you might need to go back. So yeah, are we all there? We're up on the balls of our feet. Spread your toes out a little bit here if you like, and just do a little bit of rocking on the balls of your feet. We'll go a little bit further with this in a moment, but from here we're going to move into a forward bend and roll back up into standing. So once you've done a little bit of rocking forwards and back here, then you can start to send your heels down and your sit bones up. So you come back into a forward bend. Have a breath or two here. And then we're going to trail our hands up the front of our body, touching the backs of the hands together. So we're taking our arms up, sort of the midline of our body, all the way up to the ceiling. That's it. Let a breath come in and then take your arms out in a big circle to the sides, all the way back into prayer pose in front of you. Good. So we should be back where we started at the back of our mats. We're going to come down through do some different things on the floor now. So feel the contact of your hands together. Let a breath come in as you exhale. Take your arms down and then up. Let the breath come in, feel long and tall, and then curling down into your forward bend. Breath or two there. Feel very rooted through your heels. And then walking your hands on into dog pose again. And have a couple of breaths in dog. Now, from dog pose, you can either come down to hands and knees, or we're going to be going into lunge. So you can either do it by coming onto hands and knees, or by stepping one foot directly from dog into lunge. And so I'll just leave that up to you. I'm going to come onto hands and knees. Yes, so stepping one foot forward between your hands, and then you may want to, depending on how you came into lunge, you may want to walk your back foot away from you. So we end up with our front knee over our front heel, giving ourselves some breaths in lunge. Now, depending on how it feels, if you want to do a bit of easing in and out of lunge, you could untuck your back toe. Well, at least I need to do that, feels better. And do a little bit of the sort of easing back out of lunge where we look back behind us. Our chest stays close to our front thigh. And then we can rock our weight forwards again, maybe come up onto our fingertips. That's it, let our gaze come forwards. So a couple of times, if you like, easing in and out of lunge. With, what do I say? With the intention that perhaps it means we can then stay in lunge a little bit more easily for a couple of breaths. And it's up to you. When we come to swap sides of in lunge, if you want to go back into dog pose to swap sides of lunge, you can do, or you can do it from hands and knees. It's entirely up to you. So we'll bring the other foot forwards into lunge. We'll see how it feels. So again, we're coming back to this feeling of opening through the front of the body, which we did a little bit of in that pinwheel sort of twist front opening movement. Good. So side 2 of lunge. If you want to do a little bit of easing backwards, you can do. Untuck your back toe. My knee prefers that. So looking back behind you, letting your spine come into a soft curve, then looking forwards, weight into the front foot. So obviously as I rock back, I come onto my front heel. And then as I come back into the lunge, the whole of the front foot is planted on the ground. And again, remember our intention here is to end up in lunge. Good. Okay, and so from lunge, we're going to be coming onto hands and knees. And we're going to be moving through plank pose into dog pose and then folding down into child pose. So just make sure to start with, you've got your shoulders over your wrists, and then we can lengthen one leg back behind us into plank and add the other leg in, and just see if we can feel ourselves in that long straight line of plank. There's a sort of long diagonal from our shoulders through to our heels. And we know if we're in that straight line of plank, it all looks very good, everyone, because we can feel our abdominals are working. We don't need to make them work. They'll do it all on their own. Trying to breathe in lunge, not the easiest thing. And then from lunge, let your knees come down, fold back into child pose, have a couple of breaths there. And just soften and relax as much as you can in child, particularly in the shoulders and the wrists and the hands. Rest your body down on the ground. Good. Feel the breath come in, feel the breath leaving you. What's very exciting here, I can see a bit more snow coming down. So one more cycle of breath in child pose and then coming back onto hands and knees. So when you come back onto hands and knees, you're going to lengthen each leg out behind you in turn. So tucking your toes under in your back foot, lengthen that leg out behind you. Add the other one in. Yeah, I'll do the other side. Good. And then, like we did in our last cycle of this little sequence, tuck both sets of toes under, walk your hands into your knees, come up onto the balls of your feet. And we're going to go a little bit further with this time. So maybe a good idea to spread your toes out at this point. We can do a little bit of rocking here on the balls of our feet, but we're actually, you'll be thrilled to hear, going to come on into our kneeling foot stretch. So let our knees come down onto the ground. Sit back over our heels. Very nice. Keep breathing and smiling and softening our shoulders despite the feet complaining. Good. And then from here, we'll come forwards, back onto hands and knees, do the nice bit where we untuck the toes and run them on the floor. And then you could, again, it always feels lovely to lengthen each leg out, but I always find to lengthen one leg at a time, tuck the toes under, come back to that one I don't know why that feels so nice after those, but it does. And then this time you're going to come into a dog pose, and we'll go from dog pose into a forward bend and up into standing. So big handprints on the floor, tucking your toes under, exhaling, rocking your hips back and then up. Coming into dog and just seeing, can you enjoy a sort of maybe a quietish dog pose now? We've done a few. Of course, bending the knees, bending one knee, letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave you. From dog pose, you're going to be walking your hands in towards your feet. So you end up in your forward bend. Letting your head go, sinking into your heels. And then coming up into standing, touching the backs of your hands together, rolling up into standing, taking your arms up towards the ceiling, letting a breath come in, and then taking your arms out and around. Good. And then having a little shake out. So we're going to come back to one more cycle of that sequence in a moment, but we're going to do a few, come back to our balancing first of all. So come back 2 feet a little distance apart if they're not, and come back to this one where we're bringing our weight forwards onto the balls of our feet. And we're going to revisit this one with slightly different arm movements. And I'm just thinking, yeah, maybe if I explain to you what we're going to do, it's very simple, but if I explain to you when you're not balancing. So what we're going, I'll do it without balancing. So we're going to come up onto the balls of our feet and take our arms up. And then when we've got our arms up, we're going to touch our thumb onto one of our fingers. Doesn't matter which, but I'll do the same in each side. And then bring our arms out to shoulder height. So we're touching a thumb to a finger. And then we'll finish from there by crossing our wrists in front of us. So you're basically, when your arms are up, you're bringing them into a mudra. Any finger we touch with our thumb is a mudra. So I would just go with what you feel led to doing. Which finger do you feel drawn to touch with your thumb? But I would say touch the same finger in each hand. Yeah, personally, I find it far too distracting if I was doing different fingers. So let's see how this feels, and we'll try these hand movements in a couple of different balances. So when you're ready, bringing your weight forwards onto the balls of your feet. Got a bit more light there, which is good. And then you're going to float your arms up. And once your arms are up, you're then going to touch your thumb onto a finger in each hand, the same finger I suggest in each hand. Good. Let your shoulders soften. And then from there, see what's it like to take your arms wide. And at this point, I'll turn the palms up. So you've got the finger and thumb touching. Good. Very nice. And then from here, so if our arms start to get tired, we can then draw the hands in and cross our wrists in front of our chest. And we're still touching the thumb and the finger. Good. We're still balancing on the balls of our feet, maybe. Well done. Very nice. Good. And then come down, release your arms, give your legs a shake out. We're going to do the same, sorry, there's noises coming from next door. We're going to do the same arm movements in tree pose, but you're going to start with your hands in prayer pose, then take the arms up, touch the thumb and finger, come to here. But our final point, rather than crossing the hands in front of the wrist, is we'll bring one hand onto the chest and the other hand onto the back of the pelvis, but still with the hands in the mudra, okay? Obviously, if you're feeling wobbly, you might just want to keep your hands at your breastbone in prayer pose. You don't have to do all the other little flourishes. But but sometimes it's helpful, I find, to have another focus than what's our foot doing. So let's settle down 2 feet on the floor, and let's just choose which foot we're going to stand on. So let your arms, release your hands, Close your eyes, come to rocking from side to side. So feeling your weight shift over one foot and then the other. Good. And from doing this, you're going to choose which foot you'd like to start standing on. So obviously we're going to do both sides, but you choose the easier one, the one you feel drawn to first of all. And you're going to open your eyes now. We're going to be bringing our weight onto our chosen foot. And our other foot's going to come into tree pose. And you can do whatever tree pose variation you like. It could be your foot on your ankle. You could bring your foot a bit higher up so your heel is just above your knee. Or you could bring your foot right up onto your thigh. And then the first thing is just to settle with our hands in prayer pose. And if we're feeling really wobbly, it might be at this point we go and stand near a wall. Good. And if you do feel settled at this point, then you can let your arms grow up. And you can touch your thumb onto one of your fingers. And have breath also there. And we can see what's it like to take our arms wide to the sides. And have a breath also there. And then our final resting place for our hands is keeping the thumb and finger touching, is to bring one hand onto the chest, one hand onto the back of the pelvis. And I'm resting the back of my hand on the back of my pelvis. That's just a bit more comfortable for the arm and the shoulder. Very nice. Good. Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave you. Well done. Amazing. Yes, do come down when you need to. Yeah, excellent. So we'll come on to side two. So just take a moment to have a look at your feet on the floor, settle your feet down. And then we'll start the process of bringing our weight onto the other foot. And when I was doing this yesterday, this is obviously our side two is maybe our slightly trickier standing foot. And I was really struggling, and I think I had to go to the wall. So just if this is the case, if you're coming onto your trickier standing foot and you need to move near to a wall because you're a bit wobbly, then please do. Gather your hands into prayer pose at your chest. Good. Just settle there for a breath or two. And then from there, when and if you're ready, you can let your arms come up. Nice soft shoulders and touch your thumb to a finger. It doesn't have to be the same finger as last time. Try a different one. And then the arms can come wide. Palms facing up. See how that feels again, maybe for a cycle of breath. And if you can remember, I'm taking the other hand onto my chest and pelvis, yeah? So I'm sort of swapping what I did last time, but don't worry if you don't remember. Really doesn't matter. So one hand onto the chest, and then the other hand, the back of that hand resting on the back of your pelvis. So we have our awareness in the front and the back of our body. Feeling the breath coming in, feeling the breath leaving us. Yes, and then it's definitely coming down, having a bit of a shake out. And I thought we would come back and revisit our breath. We're talking about standing, our breath of joy, which we've been doing a bit in standing as this sort of January, February lockdown, cheering us up. So we have our feet a bit wider apart than we normally do, and we bend our knees. So it's this sort of Tai Chi stance where we're dropping the tailbone. We're very sort of rooted below the waist. And remember, we're moving our arms as we breathe in, 3 arm movements on a single in-breath. So we're breathing in, taking the arms wide. We carry on breathing in, taking the arms up, and then down into a floppy forward bend. Good. So let's do that a few more times. So coming back up, remember knees bent, breathe in, arms forward, breathe in, arms wide, breathe in, arms up, and then and then back up again. Good. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, and we'll do that one more time. So breathing in, breathing in, breathing in. Okay, very nice. And then come to the back of your mat. So we're going to go down once more, I say sort of for the rest of the sequence, but we're going to be staying down. We're not going to be coming back up into standing. But we're going to be doing a few things that pick up on other things we were doing in the sequence. So come to the back of your mat and bring your hands into prayer pose. When you're ready, letting a breath come in, and as you exhale, take your arms down and then up. Feel long and tall as you let the breath come in, and as you exhale, curling down, rounding down into your forward bend, elbows on your thighs if you like. And from your forward bend, walking your hands on into dog pose. And then just a couple of breaths in dog. Before arriving back onto hands and knees. Very nice dog poses, everyone. And on hands and knees, you're going to come back to your cat movements. Rounding your back, dipping your spine. Rounding your back, dipping your spine. And have your feet flat on the ground, because we're going to add in a little bit of rocking forwards and back a few times. So you're going to round your back, stay rounded to rock your hips back over your heels. And then as you come forwards, back to hands and knees, just dip your spine down a little bit. It doesn't have to be a huge amount. You're not trying to get your chest onto the ground. So rounding up, staying rounded to rock back. And then dipping down a little bit to come back to hands and knees. So you might bend your elbows at that point, but you don't need to bend them loads. Like I said, you're not trying to get your chest to touch the floor. Rounding up, rocking back. Dipping down a little bit to come back onto hands and knees. Good. Do that a couple more times. And then you're going to end up all the way back in and stay back in child pose. So a couple more times, rounding up, rocking back, dipping down to come back to hands and knees. And then maybe the next time you round your back to the ceiling, stay rounded to rock back, but stay back in child pose this time. Good. And just have a couple of quiet breaths in child pose. Take the weight off your hands and wrists. And then again, like we did earlier in child pose, slide your hands a bit further forward so your elbows come off the ground. And then you can come up onto hands and knees in this longer child pose, this longer hands and knees position. And then you're going to tuck your toes under here, and we're going to come back to our face up dog, but moving through this rounded sort of cat movement. So rounding our back to the ceiling, rocking our hips back over our heels, toes tucked under, and then moving forwards, but this time we travel forwards, rounding our back rather than dipping. So as you exhale, traveling forwards, but rounding your back. So you're looking back behind you, and then you can open out into face up dog. Good, and we'll do this 3 times. So then we can start to reverse the movement as we come through hands and knees, tucking our toes under, rounding our back, looking back behind us, letting the breath come in, and then travel forwards to face up dog, rounding your back, looking back behind you. And then obviously when your shoulders are over your hands, then let your gaze come forwards into face up dog. We'll do that one more time. So start to reverse the movement, tuck the toes under, round the back, look back towards your feet, let a breath come in, and then traveling forwards with that rounded back, looking back behind you, opening up into one last face up dog. Good, and then from this face up dog, you will rock back into child pose. So keep your feet flat on the floor and have a couple of breaths in child pose. Good. Okay. So from child pose, we're going to come into sitting. So I'm sitting, leaning back on my hands with my feet quite wide apart. And so we're coming back. So we're doing this movement of tilting the knees from side to side. So what we did on our backs at the beginning of class, and this is also going to take us back into pinwheel. Yeah. So if we're leaning back on our hands, we can tilt our feet. No, not our feet, tilt our knees from side to side. So have your feet wide enough that when you tilt your knees to one side, the knee that's coming to the center can come onto the ground. I mean, it could come onto your foot, that's fine. But what I'd like you to do as we go to one side is then can you tap that knee on the ground a few times? Yeah, so the knee that's coming to the center, we tap on the ground. Good. And then roll the other way. Let the other knee tap on the ground a few times. Okay, good. Come back to the first way. And we're going to, from here, from this sort of pinwheel position, we're going to slide the knee that's going out to the side that would fold over in pinwheel. We're going to slide it back a little bit so we can move on into pigeon from here. So thrilled to should be thrilled. I think we've come into pigeon on Wednesday morning for a little while. So, but yes, thought we needed to. So from here, we can lengthen out the back leg. We can then start to roll our pelvis over so the pelvis is level. But if it's better for your front knee to just stay a bit lopsided in your pigeon, that's absolutely fine. So you're either sort of leaning your weight into your front leg, or you've rolled your pelvis over so your pelvis becomes a bit more level. And then in pigeon, I always like to be on my elbows to start with, sort of in the middle. And then you can decide whether you want to go a bit lower in your pigeon or a bit higher. So if you go a bit lower, it might be coming down, your forehead might come to the back of your hands to the floor. Or you might come onto your hands. And we're going to do a couple of buzzing breaths in pigeon. So I would just, for your first buzzing breath, just decide where you'd like to be, and then you can change position for your second buzzing breath. So let a breath come in. If you can bear it, let's do a second buzzing breath in pigeon, but you might want to change position of your arms, come lower or higher. So let a breath come in. Good. And then from pigeon, you're going to, it gets even better. We're going to roll our weight back onto that front leg, top of that front leg thigh, and swing our back leg around towards our cow legs. So remember, we've got these variations. So Marie, I think you were keeping your bottom leg long on one side. That's an option. Or this top foot can step the other way. Good. So are we all there in something that's tolerably comfortable, that we could just turn a little bit? Yeah. So we're trying to just feel sort of heavy below the waist, and can we turn to the right and to the left? We'll eventually stay turned towards our top leg. Sometimes it's a bit confusing which way that is, but we're turning to where we're facing our top thigh, and just have a breath or so there. And then before we come out of cow legs, if you can bear it, we'll have a cycle of buzzing breath, turned facing towards the center of cow. If cow legs is really easy for you, you could fold forwards with your buzzing breath, but that's only if it's really easy, okay? So let a breath come in. And then lean back on your arms. Ease your legs out. Give your legs a little bit of a wobble or a roll. And you're probably thinking, how on earth did we get into there? And we were here, weren't we? We were here tilting our knees. So come back. Let your knees tip the other way, so that from this position we can slide the back knee back a little bit. So really, so this thighs in line with the long edge of the mat. And then shift our weight into that bent front leg, lengthen the other leg out behind us. And just decide whether you're going to keep your weight resting through that bent front leg, or whether you're going to roll your pelvis so it's a bit more central. Either is good. It's just important that you're not feeling discomfort in your front knee. Yeah, that's when you being off to the side is helpful. And remember, we're going to have 2 cycles of buzzing breath in pigeon. So you can choose what your first arm position. I would probably maybe start on my elbows. That's quite somewhere in the middle. We'll let a breath come in. We'll have our buzzing breath here. We'll see how it feels. Okay, and then for your second buzzing breath, either decide whether you're going to go a bit lower in pigeon, or stay where you are if you like, or come up onto your hands. Make sure you're going to be comfortable for the duration of the buzzing breath. So let a breath come in. Very nice. And then, yes, you know where you're going, on into swinging that back leg around, on into your, that's it, on into your cow legs. Yes, I was, is that one of your grandchildren there, Linda? So it's very sweet. I was like, oh, someone's appeared. So yeah, seeing how you feel on this side of cow legs. Remember, you've got these options. The bottom leg could be long. You could step your top foot back, the other side of your knee. Yes, and exactly like some of you are doing, that sort of little, quite light, easy turning movements from side to side. So we've got that contrast between the sort of heavy pelvis and legs, and then light upper body. Have a breath or 2, turn towards your top leg. And then we'll come to the center, and we'll have our buzzing breath. I wouldn't say our last buzzing breath because we're going to finish with a little bit more buzzing breath on our backs. So turning back to the center, letting a breath come in. Remember, you can fold forwards if you like with this buzzing breath. If cow legs is easy. Very nice. And then lean back onto your hands. Just before we lie down, we do a little bit more buzzing breath on our backs. You could let your legs be just long and wide, or you could let your legs be long and wide, because I know some of you quite like that. So it's always helpful to visit these things. So let me see. What I suggest at this point is putting on your warm things. So you can have another couple of breaths. So I'll just show you. We're going to come onto our backs. We're going to see how we feel. And then from here, we're going to 3 times bring our arms and legs up with a buzz before we then, settle down. Okay, so good to see the socks going on. Socks, jumper, a blanket next to you. Maybe don't start with it on if you could take your legs up to the ceiling. Yes, so this is a fun one to do with little people in your lives. So arrive on your back. Is everyone there? Good. So arrive on your back, and then you can fold your knees into your chest. And it might be nice just to do a little bit of rocking from side to side with your knees folded into you. And then, as I said, 3 times we'll take our arms and legs up to the ceiling and we'll shake them out as we make a buzzing sound. And then in between each buzzing sound, we'll gather our limbs back in towards us. So you can get ready for your first buzzing sound. Let the breath come in. Shaking out your arms and legs. And then fold your knees back in towards your chest. Let a breath come in, or even a cycle of breath. Fold your knees back in towards you, and then one last time. Fold your knees back in towards you. Then it might be nice just to lengthen your legs out on the floor. You might not want to lie with your legs long, but maybe just for a moment, lengthen both legs out. Give your legs a little roll on the floor, bounce your knees. And then decide whether you want to lie with your legs long or your knees bent. And we'll settle there quietly for a couple of minutes, although I know Maria, you really need to resolve your very important appointment. So if you don't have to go, settle down, put your blankets on, and maybe bring your hands to rest on the front of your body. That always helps us to settle and to gather our attention into our breathing. So letting your body rest, feeling the movement of the breath through your body, and encouraging your mind to settle with everything that's present right now. So the sensations of your body, the feeling of the ground beneath you in contact with various parts of your body, the feeling of your breath moving through you. These sounds around you, the feeling of the rather fresh air on your skin. I'm just going to let you lie quietly for 1 more minute, and then I shall ring the singing bowl 3 times. So wait for the sound of the bowl and the silence at the end of the 3rd sound. So thank you very much, everyone. I'm just going to stop.